The War Council chamber aboard the Dominion flagship Eternal Judgment smelled like burnt ozone and overconfidence. I should know. I had been breathing both for the past 6 cycles as Fleet Marshal of the 3rd Expansion Armada. My name is Velkran, and I am a Korthian. 7 feet of scaled military excellence, with ancestors who conquered 47 star systems before I even hatched from my egg. We do not lose wars. We do not negotiate. We certainly do not worry about species that still use projectile weapons and chemical propulsion. And yet, here I was, worried. Marshal Velkran, sir. My tactical officer, a young Korthian named Vrakken, practically vibrated with excitement. The human defensive line at Sector 9 has collapsed. Their colony world, Meridian 4, is now within striking distance. We estimate complete planetary subjugation within 3 solar rotations. I studied the holographic display floating before me. Meridian 4 glowed like a ripe fruit, ready for harvest. Human ships scattered in retreat. Their defense platforms burned. Everything pointed to inevitable victory. So why did my scales itch with unease? What about the human commander? I asked. The one they call Marcus Kane? Dravic's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. The intelligence suggests he withdrew his forces to the asteroid belt surrounding Meridian 4. It's a defensive position, we assume. Quite predictable, actually. Humans always retreat to familiar territory when facing superior forces. Predictable. I rolled the word around in my mouth like a stone. Tell me, Vrakken, how many predictable moves has Commander Kane made in the past 8 engagements? My tactical officer's silence spoke volumes. Let me explain something about Marcus Kane. The human military hierarchy assigned him to Meridian 4 expecting nothing. It was a backwater colony, barely worth defending according to their own strategic assessments. They sent Kane there to die quietly while their main fleets protected more valuable holdings. But Kane did not die quietly. He did not die at all, actually, which was becoming increasingly inconvenient for my invasion schedule. Sir, permission to speak freely? Vrakken straightened his posture. Granted. The humans are outmatched in every conceivable metric. Their ships are slower, their weapons weaker, their armor thinner. Commander Kane is simply delaying the inevitable. When we assault Meridian 4 tomorrow, he will have no choice but to surrender or watch his colony burn. I wanted to agree. Every logical circuit in my military-trained brain screamed agreement, but I had read the reports. All of them. Every skirmish, every minor engagement, every bizarre tactical decision Kane had made over the past 4 months. The human commander never tried to win. He only tried to survive one more day. And somehow, maddeningly, he kept succeeding. Double our scout patrols around the asteroid belt, I ordered. And get me everything we know about Kane's background. Everything. 6 hours later, I regretted that request. He was a logistics officer? I stared at the data scroll in disbelief. The human commander who has been frustrating the 3rd Expansion Armada is a former supply chain manager? My intelligence officer, a 4-armed Korthian named Selvix, nodded. Correct, Marshal. Marcus Kane spent 15 years coordinating food shipments, fuel deliveries, and ammunition distribution for various human military installations. He never commanded a combat vessel until they assigned him to Meridian 4. This makes no sense. Indeed, sir. His combat academy scores were mediocre at best. His promotion to commander was, according to human military gossip we intercepted, a bureaucratic accident. Someone filed paperwork incorrectly, and Kane ended up with a commission he never wanted. I leaned back in my command throne, feeling the weight of something I could not quite name. What about his personal file, family? Motivations? Selvix manipulated the holographic display. A human face appeared. Average height for their species. Brown hair, already graying at the temples despite his relative youth. Tired eyes that had seen too many supply manifests and not enough sleep. Nothing remarkable. Nothing threatening. Except those eyes. They held something I recognized from my own reflection after particularly difficult campaigns. Exhaustion. Determination. The look of someone who had accepted that tomorrow might not come, but would fight for it anyway. Kane has a daughter, Selvix continued, 12 years old. Living in the colony below. His wife died in a transport accident 7 years ago. According to intercepted personal communications, he reads his daughter a bedtime story every night via holocall, even during active combat operations. Sentimental, I muttered. Typical human weakness. But I made a note in my personal files anyway. Leaders who fight for abstracts like glory or conquest can be predicted. Leaders who fight for their children are dangerous. Marshal. Dravik burst onto the command deck, his scales flushed with excitement. Sir, you need to see this. Commander Kane is broadcasting on all frequencies. He wants to talk. Now this was interesting. I settled into my command throne and activated the communication array. The view screen flickered to life, revealing Commander Marcus Kane sitting in what appeared to be the cramped bridge of a human frigate. He looked tired. He looked underfunded. He looked like someone who desperately needed a vacation and a competent tailor. He did not look like he was about to surrender. Fleet Marshal Velkran, Kane began, his voice rough from what I assumed was too much coffee and not enough rest. Thank you for accepting my call. I wanted to discuss terms. Terms of surrender, I presume? I kept my tone neutral. Professional. Your defensive line has collapsed. Your fleet is scattered. Your colony is defenseless. I am prepared to offer generous conditions if you yield immediately. Kane smiled. It was not a happy expression. Actually, Marshal, I wanted to discuss the terms of your retreat. Silence filled my command deck. I heard Dravik's sharp intake of breath behind me. Selvix's forearms tensed simultaneously. You want me, I said slowly, carefully, to retreat? Yes, sir. Please turn your Armada around, leave this sector, and forget Meridian 4 exists. In return, I promise not to destroy your flagship and 70% of your fleet. I laughed. I could not help it. The sheer audacity of this supply officer turned accidental commander, sitting in his aging frigate, threatening the most powerful military force in 4 quadrants. Commander Kane, I said when my laughter subsided, I admire your courage. I truly do. But courage without capability is simply suicide with extra steps. You have 36 combat vessels, most of them damaged. I have 400 warships, all fully operational. Your threats are empty? Are they, though? Kane leaned forward, and I saw something shift in those tired eyes. Something calculating. Tell me, Marshal, what do you know about supply chain management? I beg your pardon? Supply chains. Logistics. The boring stuff that keeps armies fed, fueled, and fighting. See, I spent 15 years making sure soldiers got their meals on time and ships got their ammunition before battles. Do you know what you learn after 15 years of that? I said nothing. Something about his tone warned me to listen. You learn that every system has a bottleneck, Kane continued. Every operation has a weak point. Every impressive military force is really just a very complicated machine that requires constant feeding, constant maintenance, constant attention to 1,000 tiny details that generals never think about. He pulled up his own holographic display. Your fleet requires fuel, Marshal. Specifically, you need refined plasma cores for your hyperdrive systems. Your supply chain runs through Station 17, located 6 light years from here. That station processes all the plasma fuel for every Korthian vessel in this sector. My scales went cold. Now I am just a former logistics officer, Kane said, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. But I spent the last 4 months studying your supply network instead of, actually fighting you. Funny thing about being outgunned and outnumbered. It gives you time to think about creative solutions. What have you done? Oh, I have not done anything yet, but I have 6 modified human cargo vessels currently drifting in stealth mode near Station 17. Each one is loaded with enough explosive payload to turn that station into very expensive dust. And before you think about warning them or sending ships, Those vessels have automated triggers. If they do not receive my personal access code every 6 hours, they detonate automatically. My claws dug into the armrests of my throne. You are bluffing. Maybe, Kane admitted. But here is the thing about bluffs, Marshal. You only find out if they are real by calling them. And if I am not bluffing, you lose your entire fuel supply for this sector. Your 400 warships become 400 very large paperweights drifting in space until rescue arrives in, what? 3 months? 4? You would commit such a dishonorable act? I hissed. Attacking civilian support infrastructure? Kane's expression hardened. You are about to bomb a colony full of farmers and engineers, Marshal. Do not lecture me about honor. He had a point. I hated that he had a point. Furthermore, Kane continued, clearly warming to his theme now, I also have teams positioned near your communication relays in Subsector 7. Knock those out, and your fleet cannot coordinate effectively. I have already mapped every asteroid in this belt that contains high ferrous content, and I can use magnetic accelerators to turn them into very large, very fast missiles. And I have been dropping stealth mines throughout your projected approach vectors for the past 2 weeks. You have been busy, I said dryly. Sleep is overrated when your daughter's life is on the line, Kane replied. So here is my offer. Turn around. Leave. Find another colony to bother. Because I cannot beat you in a fair fight, Marshal. But I stopped playing fair about 3 months ago. I studied his face through the view screen, searching for tells, for weakness, for the crack in his armor that would let me know this was all desperation and empty threats. I found nothing but exhausted determination. I need to consult with my officers, I said finally. You have 2 hours, Kane replied. Then my crews get tired, and tired people make mistakes. Like accidentally forgetting to input access codes on time. The communication cut off, leaving me staring at a blank screen. Dravik spoke first. Sir, he cannot possibly have done all of that. The logistics alone would be impossible with his limited resources. Would they? I turned to Selvix. Analysis. My intelligence officer's 4 arms moved rapidly across his console. Marshal, I hate to admit this, but Kane is correct about Station 17 being our supply bottleneck. If he destroys it, we would indeed be stranded here. As for the stealth cargo vessels, our sensors show nothing, but human stealth technology, while primitive, is effective at close ranges. The communication relays are lightly guarded. He could damage them. What about the mines in our approach vectors? Checking now. Selvix's scales paled slightly. Sir, I am detecting trace radiation signatures consistent with dormant explosive devices throughout the projected attack corridors. They are well hidden, but they are there. A heavy silence settled over my command deck. He actually did it, Dravik whispered. And that insane human actually did it. I stood from my throne and walked to the main viewport. Meridian 4 hung in space like a fragile blue jewel. 50,000 human civilians lived on that world. Farmers, engineers, children. They had no defenses beyond the scattered fleet that Kane commanded. And he had spent 4 months not preparing to fight me, but preparing to make victory too expensive to achieve. Marshal? Dravik prompted. Your orders. I thought about my own career. 47 conquered systems, thousands of battles, countless enemies crushed beneath the might of Korthian superiority. I had never lost. I had never retreated. I had also never faced an opponent who cared more about surviving than winning. Tactical assessment I ordered. If we proceed with the assault, accounting for Kane's countermeasures, what is our projected casualty rate? Selvix worked his console frantically. A conservative estimate. Assuming only half of his threats are real, we lose between 160 and 200 vessels, plus the station, which means we would be stranded for months. The campaign would succeed, but at catastrophic cost. And if all his threats are real, then we lose the fleet, Marshal. All of it. I watched Meridian 4 rotate slowly in the void. Somewhere down there, Marcus Kane's 12-year-old daughter was probably sleeping, dreaming of whatever human children dream about, unaware that her father, the accidental commander who never wanted this job, had just held off the most powerful military force in known space with nothing but desperate creativity and calculated threats. "Prepare the fleet for withdrawal," I said quietly. "Sir?" Dravik sounded shocked. "You heard me. We are leaving. But the dishonor. The High Command will demand explanations. We will be the first Korthian Armada to retreat from a numerically inferior force in over a century." "Then I will tell the High Command the truth," I replied, still staring at that blue world. "I will tell them that Marcus Kane did not try to beat us. He simply made survival more appealing than victory. And that is a strategy we have no effective counter for." I turned to face my officers. "Besides, there are 46 other human colonies in this sector. We will find easier targets, ones commanded by glory-seeking admirals instead of terrified logistics officers." "But sir," Selvix ventured carefully, "what if Kane is bluffing? What if this is all an elaborate deception?" "Then he is the best liar I have ever encountered," I said. "And even if he is bluffing about the explosives, he is not bluffing about his willingness to do whatever it takes to protect that colony. Men like that do not surrender. They make you kill them, and killing them takes more time, more resources, and more casualties than I am willing to commit to one backwater world." I activated the communication array. Kane's face appeared again, looking even more tired than before. "Commander Kane, I began formally. The 3rd Expansion Armada will withdraw from this sector. You have 24 hours to remove your minds and deactivate whatever other surprises you have prepared. After that, I strongly suggest you request reinforcements from your central command. Because next time they send someone, it will not be me." Kane nodded slowly. "Thank you, Marshal. For what it is worth, I am sorry it came to this." "No, you are not," I replied with a slight smile. "You are relieved. There is a difference." "Fair point." Kane rubbed his eyes. "Will you get in trouble for this?" "From your superiors?" "Almost certainly. But I have been a soldier long enough to know that tactical withdrawal is not the same as defeat. I will find another battle to win. You, however, should probably find a different career. This one seems to be aging you rapidly." Kane laughed. It sounded rusty, like he had not done it in months. "Tell me about it. I just wanted to count supply crates and go home on time. Instead, I am threatening fleet marshals and planning acts of industrial sabotage. War makes us all into people we did not expect to become," I said philosophically. "Good luck, Commander Kane. I hope your daughter appreciates having a father who is willing to threaten exploding fuel stations for her safety." "She thinks I work in an office," Kane replied with a sad smile. "And I would like to keep it that way." The communication ended. I watched as my armada slowly, reluctantly, began powering up their hyperdrives for withdrawal. 400 vessels retreating from 36 damaged human ships. It would be remembered as the greatest humiliation in Korthian military history. I found I did not care. "Marshal?" Dravik approached cautiously. "I do not understand. We could have won." "Yes," I agreed. But Kane understood something we did not. Victory does not matter if you do not survive to enjoy it. He was never trying to beat us. He was trying to make sure his daughter could read bedtime stories with him tomorrow night. I looked at my tactical officer. "And that, Dravik, is why you never underestimate supply officers. They know where all the weak points are." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving Meridian 4 intact and untouched. 3 days later, sitting in my quarters and writing the report that would probably end my military career, I received an encrypted message through back channels. The text was simple. "Thank you for not making me find out if I was bluffing, MK." I deleted the message immediately, but I smiled as I did it. 2 months after that, I heard reports of another Korthian fleet attempting to take Meridian 4. They were commanded by an ambitious young admiral named Kraxus, who wanted to restore Korthian honor and prove that I had been a coward. He probably assumed Kane had been bluffing. Station 17 exploded 2 hours before Kraxus reached firing range of the colony. The entire Korthian force spent 3 months drifting in space, waiting for rescue ships to tow them home. Kane apparently had not been bluffing. I was demoted to logistics coordination after my official disgrace. The military council called it punishment. I called it retirement with extra steps. But sometimes, late at night in my new quiet office, I thought about Marcus Kane and his daughter. I wondered if he was still reading her bedtime stories. I hoped he was. Because in the end, that human supply officer taught me something my decades of military service never had. Sometimes the greatest victories are the ones where everybody gets to go home alive. Even if it means threatening to blow up fuel stations to do it. And that, I decided, was perfectly acceptable. The war continued elsewhere, but Meridian 4 remained untouched. Other commanders learned from Kraxus's mistake. Nobody wanted to face the logistics officer who fought like he had nothing to lose and everything to protect. I spent my remaining years coordinating supply shipments for the Korthian military. Ironic, really. I learned more from Kane's example than I ever did from victory. Make sure the fuel arrives on time. Check the supply lines. Protect the infrastructure. Because in the end, wars are not won by the strongest fleet or the bravest soldiers. They are won by the people who make sure those soldiers have something to eat and somewhere to sleep. Marcus Kane knew that truth, and it saved his world. 3 years passed before I saw Marcus Kane again. 3 years of coordinating ammunition shipments, fuel deliveries, and supply manifests. 3 years of watching the war continue from behind a desk instead of a command throne. 3 years of being the laughingstock of the Korthian military. The Marshal who ran from a human logistics officer. I did not mind, honestly. The work was boring, but nobody shot at me, and I slept better at night. Then everything went wrong in ways I never anticipated. Velkran, my assistant, a nervous young Korthian named Prill, burst into my office without knocking. "Sir, you need to see the emergency broadcast. Right now." Eerie. I looked up from my datapad, annoyed. "Prill, I am in the middle of calculating grain shipments for the 4th Fleet. Unless the galaxy is ending, it can wait." "Sir, the galaxy might actually be ending." That got my attention. The holographic display activated, showing the pale, terrified face of High Commander Zarthex, supreme leader of all Korthian military forces. I had never seen Zarthex look afraid before. He had conquered 12 systems personally. Fear was not in his vocabulary. Until now, all Korthian forces, all personnel, all citizens, Zarthex began, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "We have made contact with a new species. They call themselves the Vrakken swarm. They do not negotiate. They do not accept surrender. They consume everything in their path, converting biological matter into more soldiers, more ships, and more weapons. We estimate they have already destroyed 17 inhabited worlds in the outer sectors." My scales went cold. "Our fleets have engaged them 4 times, Zarthex continued. "We have lost 3,000 vessels. They have lost nothing because they rebuild faster than we can destroy them. At current projections, the swarm will reach the core Korthian worlds in 6 months. The transmission showed battle footage, organic ships that looked like they had grown instead of been built, swarming over Korthian destroyers like insects over carrion. Acid weapons that dissolved armor plating. Boarding parties of creatures that moved too fast, killed too efficiently, adapted too quickly. "We are calling for a galaxy-wide alliance," Zarthex said, and I could hear how much those words cost him. "All species, all nations, all former enemies. We face extinction if we do not stand together. Emergency summit on Neutral Station Gamma 7 in 48 hours. All military personnel with strategic experience are required to attend." The transmission ended. I sat in silence, processing what I had just witnessed. The Korthian Empire, undefeated for 3 centuries, was calling for help. "Sir?" Prill whispered. What do we do? Pack my travel case, I said quietly. I am going to that summit, and I have a terrible feeling I know who else will be there. I was right. Gamma 7 station was chaos. Representatives from 40 different species crowded the conference halls, all talking, all arguing, all desperately trying to find a solution to a problem that had no obvious answer. I saw Torlians, insectoid species known for their tactical brilliance. I saw Mreni, aquatic beings who controlled 3 entire nebula regions. I saw species I had never even heard of, all gathered because the Vrakken swarm did not care about politics or treaties or surrender negotiations. And in the back of the main conference hall, looking exactly as tired and underpaid as I remembered, stood Commander Marcus Kane. He noticed me at the same moment I noticed him. Our eyes met across the crowded room. He raised his coffee cup in a small salute. I nodded back. No, we both knew why we were here. The emergency council convened an hour later. High Commander Zarthex presided, his scales dull with stress. Around the circular table sat the most powerful military minds from 40 civilizations. The situation is dire, Zarthex began without preamble. The Vrakken swarm moves through space like a plague. They hit fast, consume everything, and move to the next target before we can mount effective counterattacks. Our combined fleets number over 10,000 vessels. Theirs number in the hundreds of thousands and growing. A Torlian admiral, whose name I did not catch, clicked his mandibles nervously. We have tried everything. Conventional warfare fails. Nuclear weapons only make them stronger because they absorb the radiation. Biological weapons do not work because they adapt too quickly. How do you fight an enemy that turns your own attacks into food? Silence filled the chamber. Then a tired human voice spoke from the back. You do not fight them at all. Every head turned toward Marcus Kane. He stood up slowly, coffee cup still in hand, looking like he had not slept in a week. Explain yourself, human, Zarthex growled. With respect, sir, you have been trying to beat them. That is the wrong approach. Kane walked toward the central holographic display. The swarm consumes resources and converts them into more units. They are not an army, they are a biological manufacturing process. You cannot defeat a manufacturing process with military force. You can only disrupt the supply chain. I felt something click in my brain. Of course. Of course he would see it that way. Go on, I said, speaking up for the first time. Several beings turned to look at me in surprise. Commander Kane is correct. Continue, please. Kane nodded at me, acknowledging the support. The swarm needs 3 things to function: raw biomass for building materials, energy for conversion processes, and time to adapt to new threats. Deny them any one of those 3 things, and their entire system collapses. A Mreni representative, a floating jellyfish-like creature, pulsed with skepticism. Impossible. They harvest biomass from every world they encounter. We cannot evacuate entire planets fast enough. No, but we can poison them, Kane replied. Not with weapons, with industrial contamination. Seed the planets in their path with heavy metals, toxic compounds, synthetic polymers. Things that look like food but gum up their biological processors. Make every world they consume give them indigestion instead of nutrition. The Torlian admiral leaned forward. That could work for slowing them, but not stopping them. What about the energy and time factors? Kane manipulated the holographic display, showing the swarm's projected path through known space. They move in a predictable pattern, always toward the highest concentration of inhabited worlds. They are following the food, which means they are following our supply routes, our trade lanes, our communication networks. Obviously, Zarthex snapped. But knowing their path has not helped us stop them. Because you are trying to stop them where they are strong, Kane said patiently. But their strength is also their weakness. They have to keep moving, keep consuming, keep growing. That requires massive energy expenditure. What happens if we collapse the network they are following? I stood up, finally understanding. We destroy our own infrastructure, cut the supply lines, make them chase ghosts through empty space. Exactly, Kane confirmed. We evacuate populations ahead of their advance. We dismantle stations, collapse jump gates, drain fuel depots. We turn the next 50 systems in their path into a logistics desert. Nothing to eat, nowhere to resupply. Easy route to the next target. Force them to expend energy finding us instead of consuming us. The chamber erupted in argument. Representatives shouting about the economic cost, the political ramifications, the sheer impossibility of evacuating that many civilians in time. Zarthex slammed his claw on the table, demanding silence. This plan is insane. You are asking us to destroy centuries of infrastructure, to abandon hundreds of colonies, to make ourselves weaker in the hope it makes them weaker too. Yes, Kane said simply, because the alternative is extinction. And I would rather be poor and alive than rich and dead. The Torlian admiral clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. The logic is sound. The swarm cannot adapt to starvation. If we control what they consume, we control their growth rate. But the execution would require perfect coordination across 40 different military hierarchies. One mistake, one delayed evacuation, and entire populations die. Which is why we need a single unified command structure, I said, surprising myself. Someone who understands supply chain, logistics, resource management, and strategic withdrawal under pressure. I looked directly at Kane. Someone who has proven they can make survival more important than victory. Zarthex followed my gaze. You want to put a human logistics officer in command of the largest military coalition in galactic history? I want to put the only commander who ever made me retreat in command, I corrected. Because he understands something the rest of us do not. Winning does not matter if you are too dead to celebrate. The debate raged for 6 more hours. Representatives argued, threatened, pleaded. The Torlians supported the plan. The Mreni opposed it. Smaller species went back and forth, weighing survival against sovereignty. Finally, as dawn broke over Gamma 7 Station, Zarthex called for a vote. 32 species voted yes. 8 voted no. Marcus Kane became Supreme Coordinator of the Allied Defense Initiative. A logistics officer who never wanted command now led 10,000 warships and the fate of billions. He looked absolutely miserable about it. I hate politics, Kane muttered to me afterward as we stood in the station observation deck watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. I hate speeches. I hate committees. I just want to count supplies and go home. Welcome to leadership, I replied dryly. It only gets worse from here. Thanks for the support back there, by the way. Kane sipped his coffee. Why did you vouch for me? Last time we met, I threatened to blow up your fuel supply. Precisely, I said. You made threats you were prepared to follow through on. You understood the value of infrastructure over glory. And you never tried to beat me, only survive me. Those are exactly the qualities we need right now. Kane was quiet for a moment. My daughter is on Meridian 4. If this plan fails, that colony is directly in the swarm's path. Then I suggest we make sure the plan does not fail. He smiled tiredly. You are volunteering to help? I am a disgraced logistics coordinator with 3 years of experience managing supply chains, I pointed out. And you need someone who understands Korthian military bureaucracy. Also, you will need someone to yell at admirals who think they know better than you. I am very good at yelling. Velkran, you are hired. First order of business, I need complete inventory of every fuel depot, every food storage facility, and every civilian transport within 50 systems of the swarm's projected path. I pulled out my datapad. Already done. I started compiling it during the committee arguments. I assumed you would win the vote. Kane stared at me. You just had that ready? I spent 3 years in logistics, Commander. I know how to prepare for unlikely scenarios. I transferred the files to his system. Also, I took the liberty of designing preliminary evacuation schedules based on population density and available transport capacity. Velkran, have I mentioned that you are terrifyingly competent? Not recently, but I appreciate the acknowledgement. The next 3 months were the most exhausting of my life. And I had lived through military campaigns, so that was saying something. Being organized the entire operation like a massive supply chain problem. Which technically it was. Move population from Planet B to Safe Zone C using Transport Capacity D while avoiding Swarm Force E. Simple math, impossibly complicated execution. He divided the galaxy into sectors, assigned coordinators to each one, created backup plans for the backup plans, instituted a communication protocol that would make military hierarchies jealous with its efficiency. And he worked constantly. 18-hour days were normal. 20-hour days were common. I found him asleep at his desk more than once, datapad still clutched in his hand, coffee cup knocked over and cold. "You are going to kill yourself," I told him during one of these moments. "Exhausted commanders make mistakes. Cannot afford mistakes," Kane muttered without opening his eyes. 12 billion people depend on this evacuation working perfectly. They also depend on you being functional. I pulled up a chair. "Take a break." "That is an order. You do not outrank me anymore." "No, but I am older and significantly more intimidating." Close the datapad, Kane. "Sleep." He did, surprisingly, for 4 whole hours before diving back into work. The evacuations began. Civilian transports moved populations from the outer colonies to the inner defensive zones. Military vessels stripped everything valuable from doomed stations. Engineers collapsed jump gates behind the fleeing refugees, cutting off the easy routes the swarm followed. And we poisoned the planets. Industrial waste dumped into oceans. Synthetic compounds seeded into forests. Heavy metals scattered across agricultural zones. We made every world in the swarm's path toxic, indigestible, useless. It felt wrong. Destroying our own colonies, even empty ones, violated every military instinct I had. But Kane was right. Dead worlds could be rebuilt. The dead populations could not. The swarm hit the first poisoned colony 3 weeks into the evacuation. We watched through long-range sensors as their organic ships descended, as their harvesting tendrils spread across the surface, as they began consuming everything in sight. Then the readings changed. The swarm slowed. Their ships began venting biological waste. Their expansion rate dropped from exponential to linear. "It is working," Kane whispered, staring at the data. "They are choking on industrial poison." But they did not stop. They adapted, slower than before, but still adapting, creating new filtration systems, developing enzymes that could break down synthetic materials, evolution in real time. "How long until they overcome the poisoning?" I asked. "Dia." 4 months, Kane's science advisor, a brilliant human woman named Dr. Amara Lee, replied grimly. "Maybe 5. They are learning to eat our contamination." "Then we have 4 months to finish the evacuation," Kane said. "Everyone double time. No exceptions, no delays." The plan almost worked perfectly. Almost. The colony at Tarn 5 refused to evacuate. The governor, a stubborn Torlian named Kretch, insisted his people would rather die defending their homes than abandon them. He blocked the transport ships, disabled the evacuation coordinators, and prepared his meager defense fleet to fight the swarm. 8 million civilians trapped because one official had more pride than sense. Kane tried negotiating, tried ordering, tried threatening. Nothing worked. Kretch would not budge. "We leave them," Zarthax advised during an emergency council meeting. 8 million is tragic, but acceptable losses compared to the billions we have saved. "We cannot delay the entire operation for one stubborn governor." "Unacceptable," Kane said flatly. "We do not leave people behind." "Then what do you suggest?" Zarthax demanded. "The swarm reaches Tarn 5 in 72 hours. We have no time for diplomacy." Kane was silent for a long moment. Then he looked at me. Velkran, remember when I threatened to blow up Station 17? I had a very bad feeling about where this was going. Yes. Yes. I need you to make a similar threat. Except this time I need you to actually do it. Explain. Why? Kane pulled up schematics of Tarn 5. Governor Kretch controls the evacuation because he controls the planetary defense grid. Those defense batteries are powered by 3 fusion reactors. If those reactors overload, the entire grid goes offline. Then we can land evacuation ships without interference. Causing a reactor overload would kill thousands, I protested. The resulting explosions would devastate the capital city. Not if we evacuate the reactor facilities first, Kane countered. Not if we give everyone in the blast radius advance warning. Not if we time it perfectly so the evacuation ships arrive exactly as the defenses fail. That is insane. Yes, Kane agreed. But so is letting 8 million people die because one governor has a death wish. Will you help me? I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. I will need a team of engineers and 48 hours. You have 36 hours and whatever team you can assemble. Go. I went. Then, the operation was surgical. 3 teams infiltrated Tarn 5 through civilian cargo ships. We evacuated the reactor personnel under the pretense of mandatory safety inspections. We planted override codes in the reactor control systems. We positioned evacuation transports in orbit, waiting for the signal. And I personally contacted Governor Kretch. Governor, this is Velkran, former Fleet Marshal of the 3rd Expansion Armada. I began formally. I am calling to inform you that in exactly 6 hours, the planetary defense grid will go offline due to catastrophic reactor failure. You have 6 hours to evacuate your population, or they die. Your choice. Kretch sputtered indignantly. This is terrorism. This is a declaration of war. I will have you arrested, tried, and executed for this. Probably I agreed. But you will be alive to do it. Unlike your population if they are still here when the swarm arrives. 6 hours, Governor. Choose wisely. I cut the transmission. 6 hours later, every reactor on Tarn 5 experienced simultaneous critical failures. The planetary defense grid collapsed. Evacuation ships swarmed the planet, loading panicking civilians by the thousands. Governor Kretch, faced with the choice between pride and survival, chose survival. 8 million people evacuated in 11 hours. A new record. Kretch filed 47 formal complaints against me. I did not care. The civilians were safe. That was all that mattered. Kane said nothing when I returned. He just handed me a cup of coffee and a datapad showing the next crisis that needed solving. We saved them all. Every colony, every station, every civilian population in the swarm's path. 51 systems evacuated in 3 months. 19 billion souls moved to safety. The swarm arrived to find nothing but poisoned wastelands and collapsed infrastructure. They slowed, stopped, spread out, searching for food that no longer existed. And the combined Allied fleet, 10,000 ships strong, hit them from 4 directions simultaneously. We still lost 3,000 vessels. But the swarm lost more, much more. Their growth rate crashed. Their adaptation rate slowed. Without resources to consume, they could not replace losses or evolve new defenses. The battle raged for 6 weeks. But slowly, inevitably, the swarm began to collapse. Organic ships dying faster than they could rebuild. Adaptation too slow to counter coordinated attacks. The biological manufacturing process grinding to a halt without raw materials. 3 months after the first evacuation began, the last swarm vessel was destroyed. The galaxy was saved, and Marcus Kane, former logistics officer, accidental hero, and the most exhausted human in known space, submitted his resignation immediately. I did what you needed, he told the Allied Council during his final report. Now I am going home to my daughter. Find someone else to save the galaxy next time. Nobody argued. He had earned his retirement. I found him at the spaceport, waiting for transport back to Meridian 4. So, what now? I asked. Back to counting supply crates? God, I hope so, Kane replied fervently. No more wars. No more evacuations. Just simple, boring inventory management and bedtime stories. You saved 19 billion lives. I nearly killed 8 million through reactor sabotage. Not exactly heroic. But you did not kill them. You made the hard choice, the ugly choice, and you saved them anyway. I paused. That takes courage. Kane laughed bitterly. I was terrified the entire time. Still am, honestly. I have nightmares about all the things that could have gone wrong. That means you have a conscience. Never lose that. His transport was announced. Kane picked up his single battered duffel bag. Velkran, thank you. For everything. And for supporting me, for helping coordinate the evacuations, for being willing to commit light treason when necessary. Anytime, Commander. Or, I suppose, former Commander now. Just Kane. Please. I never liked the title anyway. We shook hands, human style. It felt appropriate. Take care of yourself, I said, and give your daughter my regards. Will do. What about you? Going back to logistics coordination. Actually, I received a promotion. The Korthian military decided that anyone crazy enough to sabotage reactors and threaten governors probably deserves a second chance. I am being reinstated as Fleet Marshal, overseeing Alliance defense coordination. Kane grinned. Congratulations. Try not to conquer anyone this time. There are no promises. But I will remember the lessons you taught me. Survival before victory. Infrastructure before glory. And never underestimate supply officers. Words to live by. And Kane boarded his transport. I watched it depart, carrying the tired human back to his boring life of counting supplies and reading bedtime stories. The galaxy owed him everything. He just wanted his daughter safe. I respected that more than any military victory. 2 years later, I received an invitation to Meridian 4, a wedding. Kane's daughter, now 14, was apparently quite insistent that the scary alien Marshal who helped her father save the galaxy should attend. I went, of course, wearing my dress uniform and carrying a gift that seemed appropriate for a human child who had lived through 3 near-extinction events. A collection of bedtime storybooks, translated into 17 languages. Because surviving the galaxy requires something to read at night. Kane met me at the spaceport, looking healthier than I had ever seen him. Well-rested, happy, back to his boring civilian job and loving every minute of it. Velkran, you actually came. I never miss important events. Also, your daughter apparently threatened my diplomatic staff if I did not attend. She has your talent for creative intimidation. Kane laughed. Yeah, she gets that from me. Come on, we have food, drinks, and absolutely zero military emergencies requiring immediate attention. The celebration was wonderful. Humans from across Meridian 4, all grateful to be alive. A few other species who had heard about the party and decided to attend. Music, dancing, terrible human alcohol that burned going down. And Kane's daughter, Emma, who insisted I tell her stories about the evacuation, the reactor sabotage, and all the boring logistics that saved 19 billion lives. So you saved everyone by being really good at math? Emma asked, eyes wide. Essentially, yes, I confirmed. Your father proved that sometimes the most important battles are fought with spreadsheets instead of weapons. That is so cool. When I grow up, I want to be a logistics coordinator too. Kane groaned. Emma, please pick literally any other career. Anything. Doctor, engineer, professional musician. It's just not military logistics. But you saved the galaxy. I nearly had 17 nervous breakdowns saving the galaxy. I do not recommend it. Emma hugged her father. But you did it anyway. Because you are brave. Kane looked at me over his daughter's head. His eyes said what his words did not. that he had been terrified every single day, that he still had nightmares about everything that could have gone wrong, that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. I raised my glass in a silent toast to the accidental commander, to the supply officer who threatened fuel stations and sabotaged reactors, to the father who fought not for glory, but for one more bedtime story with his daughter. The galaxy would forget eventually. History would remember the great battles, the heroic sacrifices, the glorious victories. But I would remember the truth, that we survived because one exhausted human understood supply chains better than warfare, that survival mattered more than victory. That sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who never wanted to be heroes at all. Marcus Kane went back to his boring life, counting supplies, filing reports, reading bedtime stories, and the galaxy was safer because of it. I returned to my duties as Fleet Marshal, coordinating defenses, managing resources, and occasionally threatening stubborn governors when diplomacy failed. The lessons Kane taught me guided every decision. Protect the infrastructure. Value survival. Make the hard choices when necessary. The Korthian military never conquered another system. Instead, we focused on protecting what we had, helping rebuild what the swarm destroyed, and ensuring that supply chains stayed intact so nobody ever faced extinction again. It was boring work compared to glorious conquest. I liked it much better. Years later, when younger officers asked me about my greatest victory, I never mentioned the 47 systems I conquered. I told them about the time a human logistics officer made me retreat without firing a shot. And I told them about the 19 billion lives saved by someone who understood that winning was meaningless if everyone died trying to achieve it. That was my greatest victory. Learning when not to fight. Marcus Kane taught me that, and I never forgot it.